So here's your gyruss now up and running. Give it a second to make a little noise and we'll talk about the repair. I'm going to turn it off now. So the first part of the repair was to fix the edge connector here. So it's real common with Konami games of this era and even into the mid 90s to have non-fully populated female edge connectors. So what ends up happening there is, let's say for instance, your gyruss, if I remember right, will probably only have maybe 1 +5 wire and maybe 2 grounds. And instead of, having 2 +5 wires and 1, 2 on the front here, 3, 4 on the back, they'll put the 2 grounds, like say on the top or on the bottom on the back side underneath here. What that ends up doing is it doesn't apply proper pressure to the board. So these contacts and these edge connectors, they don't just make contact with the pins on the board, they actually squeeze the board when you slide that onto the board. And if you've only got pins on the top, then it's not applying proper pressure on the bottom side. So that means that those 2 pins on the top are not making proper contact. The poor contact causes heat. The heat causes even less contact, which creates more heat, and so on and so forth. It just keeps going until it gets so bad that either the cabinet side ends up burning up, or you get what you had here, where these 4 contacts were browned and not making good contact at all. So you can, on your cabinet, you can fully populate that edge connector. That would certainly help, although the pins that are in it now probably need to be replaced. So you'd have to extract those pins and replace those pins, or do what I did here by providing ground and +5 directly to the board. The condition of these 6 contacts now, the 4 here, you got 1 on the top, 2 on the top for ground, 2 on the bottom for ground, and then 1 on the top for +5 and 1 on the bottom for +5. So 6 pins total. Whatever the condition is of those on the board and those in your edge connector doesn't matter now, because this is going to provide a much better connection. So when you put this back in your cabinet, black wire goes to ground or common on your power supply. Red wire will go to +5 on your power supply. When you get it back in the cabinet, be sure to measure the +5, not at the power supply, but at the top of this connector. If you peel back, the wire is just right. You can get your probe in there, which I will show you. You should be able to make contact with the metal pin in there, and that'll give you an accurate connection, an accurate voltage measurement to the board. You'll probably find that it's high, let's say at the power supply side, like 5.5, 5.3, but because of voltage loss within your harness and at the edge connector and so on and so forth, it might have dropped to 4.9 or something like that. When you apply this is almost like a fire hose versus a garden hose. That being the garden hose, this being the fire hose, as far as the amount of current that can pass through these wires. You'll definitely want to make sure that you've got your +5 set right. You don't want to run them too high. Too low is not really going to hurt anything, but we don't want them to be resetting and having other problems. So now as far as the repair goes, when I got this thing back up and running, It has some graphical glitches, and that's always just ROMs that need to be reseated. I'll have to clean those real fast. So yeah, it was just a matter of reseating ROMs, but then the music was really fast, and I've never heard that before. It was like kind of like a, I don't know, it was really fast. So this circuit on the board right here is the clock for the audio section, and that clock is supposed to generate, it's supposed to be like 14.3 or something to that effect. Yeah, 14.3 megahertz. And it was actually like closer to 20. So it was running the Z80, which I believe is that part. Or maybe it's that part. I don't know why Konami did this. It's ridiculous. They scraped all the part numbers off of these things. And maybe it's not even a Z80. It might even be a 6809. However, it doesn't matter. It was running the IC way too fast, and that could damage the IC down the road. But you know, we caught it ahead of time. So let me turn the volume back up. So as you can hear, both channels are working. There's two speakers up here connected to one channel. I'm gonna start a game. And then I've got a speaker over here sitting on the bench. That's the other channel. It's kind of hard to play one-handed. But yeah, there you go. And that voltage loss we were talking about earlier. So my bench, this is 5.3. But if I measure what your board's actually getting, I bet it's closer to 5. This is difficult. Yeah, so there's a 0.3 volt loss just from that edge connector and that edge connector, and maybe a foot or two of wire. So you can imagine, you know, in a cabinet that's coming close to 40 years old. Well, yeah, it's 40 years old, that game. Well, pretty close anyway. No, 83, look at that. Yeah, 40 years old. You can imagine the voltage loss in your cabinet. So check that. And I'm gonna let this burn for the rest of the day just to make sure we're good. I will send you this video shortly.